We've just witnessed the last triple header of the 2023 season, and it hasn't disappointed. We were treated 2 sprint races, disqualifications, major shakeups, and more. But apparently, after the triple header, there's still a dispute going on regarding the result from the first race. Yeah, the first one that happened almost 3 weeks ago in Austin. So, what is going on? The Red Bull, Aston Martin, Williams, and Haas Formula 1 teams have all been summoned in regard to Haas's demand for a right of review of the US Grand Prix outcome. This will take the form of a video hearing this Wednesday on November 8th. Haas filed a right of review request over 2 weeks after the Austin race, alleging that F1's track limit restrictions were not properly enforced. And if Haas succeed, we could see the result changed weeks after the actual race. Though the team did not reveal the specifics of the appeal, it was assumed that it was related to the steward's refusal to sanction drivers for cutting the inside of the track at the Turn 6 right-hand sweep. McLaren driver Lando Norris acknowledged to exceeding track restrictions at that point, claiming that a precedent had been formed in previous tracks of, if you can't visually see it, you're going to get away with it. Norris's McLaren team is not among those who have been called. In the final standings, only one of the teams summoned had drivers in close proximity to 11th place Haas driver Nico Hülkenberg. Due to the lack of external cameras displaying the inside of the turn, Williams driver Alex Albon, who incurred a 5-second penalty in the race for track rules violations, was not penalised further at the time. Albon's car is mentioned in the FIA summons paperwork. In Austin, he finished 3.19 seconds ahead of Hülkenberg in 9th place. Logan Sargent finished 10th and was dismissive when questioned about the possibility of the US GP results being modified in the Brazilian GP. "To me, it's a bit ridiculous to be honest," said Sargent. "If they're not monitoring it in the race and capable of telling us that we're going off there, then that's not on us in my opinion." Based on available onboard footage, Red Bull's 4th place finisher Sergio Perez was also a repeat offender, while Aston Martin's involvement in the hearing suggests that its sole US GP finisher, Lance Stroll, who finished 8th in the final classification, is another target of Haas's right of review. The first hearing will be held on Wednesday to hear evidence of a significant and relevant new element, which was unavailable to the party seeking the review at the time. If such is determined to be the case, a second section of the hearing will be held. Haas will very certainly have to produce some new footage for this hearing. There is a precedent for this in the form of Lewis Hamilton's penalty in the 2020 Austrian Grand Prix, when 360-degree camera footage from his car emerged proving he did not react correctly to a yellow flag. But far more than one extra set of onboard footage would be required in this case. The steward's conclusion was as follows. Based on the video footage available, which did not include CCTV, the stewards determine, whilst there might be some indication for possible track limit infringements in Turn 6, the evidence at hand is not sufficient to accurately and consistently conclude that any breaches occurred, and therefore take no further action. Thus, more footage is needed for the FIA and the stewards to intervene. And thus, this Wednesday, the 2-part hearing will begin, with the first section hearing evidence on whether there is a significant and relevant new element, which was unavailable to the party seeking the review at the time of the decision concerned. If the evidence provided is sufficient, another second hearing will be scheduled. The suspected drivers under investigation are Williams' Alex Albon, Red Bull's Sergio Perez, and Aston Martin's Lance Stroll, albeit the FIA's summons paperwork now only relates to Albon's car, despite summons being issued for all 4 teams. The FIA's International Sporting Code, Appendix L, Chapter 4, Article 2C, specifies that drivers must use the track at all times and may not leave the track without a justifiable reason. For the avoidance of doubt, the white lines defining the track edges are considered to be part of the track, but the curbs are not. Article 33.3 of the 2023 FIA F1 Sporting Regulation states, in part, that drivers must make every reasonable effort to use the track at all times and may not leave the track without a justifiable reason. Drivers will be judged to have left the track if no part of the car remains in contact with it, and for the avoidance of doubt, any white lines defining the track edges are considered to be part of the track, but the curbs are not. The hearing on Wednesday will be divided into 2 sections, with the first hearing testimony on whether there is a significant and relevant new element, which was unavailable to the party seeking the review at the time of the decision concerned. If the stewards determine that such new information exists, implying that Haas's petition is granted, a second section of the hearing will be placed to continue the inquiry into the final race result of the United States Grand Prix. Given that footage of drivers breaking track limits without punishment emerged after the race, Haas's appeal is likely to be successful at this stage. However, given how far ahead Perez and Stroll were on track, Albon is most certainly the driver in Haas's sights. The Williams driver was 3.2 seconds ahead of Hülkenberg at the finish line. Even a 5-second penalty would knock him out of the points and give Hülkenberg a point, which may be essential as they try to catch Alfa Romeo for 9th position in the Constructors' Championship, with 2 race weekends left. Haas currently has 12 points, while Alfa Romeo has 16. The International Sporting Code's right of review allows teams to seek a review, as long as they do so within 14 days following the event in question. As a result, Austin still was viable when Haas submitted the appeal. The procedure states that the stewards will assess the petition for a review's legitimacy. This necessitates teams presenting significant and relevant material that was not available to the stewards at the time. If it is determined that such evidence has been submitted, a review to reconsider the possible infractions will be arranged. Otherwise, the petition will be dismissed and there will be no reconsideration. Haas will not say what evidence it will offer, but the procedure demands that it be new, arguing that stewards should have interpreted the evidence they did have differently, i.e. onboard cams will not suffice. Arguing that the stewards accepted that the track restrictions on the inside of Turn 6 could not be policed due to a lack of an external camera in the right location to indicate whether the back tyres were over the line or not would not work. Instead, Haas would have to produce some new footage. There are 2 probable explanations for Haas's actions. To begin, it's a bet that penalties will be used, propelling Nico Hülkenberg from 11th to the points. Second is to emphasize the need of track limits enforcement. However, for any of these to function, the review must be accepted, which is entirely dependent on the evidence. No argument, no matter how strong, will be successful unless there is considerable more evidence not available to the stewards. And not everything is significant. In the past, such submissions were rejected despite the presence of fresh information because it was deemed insignificant. Haas may have an ace up its sleeve, but it's tough to think what might have been uncovered to provide the stewards with the additional visual information required to confirm track limit violations. However, it may reference Lando Norris stating in his Thursday press conference prior to the Mexican Grand Prix that he did break track restrictions since they were not enforced. Norris said of exceeding track limits at Turn 6 that, "I did it as well, to be honest. I knew that was a corner where they couldn't penalize me because they set the precedent in previous tracks of if you can't see it, you're going to get away with it. You have to know the grey areas and the things you can get away with, and that was one of them. So to everyone that did it, fair play." That reply may be seen as a confession and thus enough to open the review door. Albeit Norris is accurate that the precedent was set, and like many drivers, he knew he could comfortably break track limits there. So even that may not be sufficient. However, if Haas can present the necessary information to start a review, the outcome might be much different. Norris acknowledged to committing it. Albon was not fined due to a lack of exterior cameras, clearly displaying the interior of Turn 6, and Perez was definitely a repeat offender based on onboard evidence. As a result, there is a substantial possibility that the result will be shuffled around even weeks after the race. The FIA has previously declared that improvements would be made in Austin ahead of next year's event to guarantee that stewards can enforce track restrictions at this corner. But still, should the FIA even allow race results to be changed weeks after it happened? Is Haas taking it too far with this one? And what could this mean for the future if Haas does succeed with its appeal? Could we see this happening more often in the future? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated with all F1 news.